So I'm Don Sanders, Executive Artistic Director of MIFA, the Massachusetts International Festival of the Arts, and we are the ones who are working on, along with everybody in this room, I'm going to say, and this community and this whole region, to get this theater open. I hope that if you've caught glimpses in these videos of what this theater is like, this is 1,600 seats. We are sitting in about 75 seats in this current space. So when you see the kinds of programming that can come into downtown Holyoke, bringing minimally 1,100 people, let's say if a show isn't totally sold out, to a 1,600 seat house, it's just such a wonderful asset. I mean, we experience, somebody used a very good phrase and said, I think we're all getting Victory Theater fatigue. Yes, we are, because it's a big job. And 1,600 seats is going to really, really make a huge difference, not just to Holyoke, but to the region and to what can happen here. So I'm very happy that we're able to have this event. We're going to have more because, quite frankly, you and everybody here in the city and in the region, you matter to us. I mean, this is why we're doing it, so people can come and catch some of the excitement of some of the performers that you saw on the video there. We are engaged in that, and we're really making tremendous strides, and we wanted to bring awareness of that to folks. So we're going to walk through some of the progress that we're looking at in terms of the project. I do want to, first of all, I want to acknowledge that we have some folks here. We have Teresita Alicea, who is our board chair, and has been absolutely fantastic. Utterly great chair. We have a new board member, Steve Adams, who has been acting as our financial advisor but has now come on the board. We have Alfred Hutt, who's sitting in the back, who has been a long-standing board member, who, those of you who might have ever gone to him as a dentist, I'm using that simple, as a doctor, what am I saying? An eye doctor, of course. And we have Susan Knightley, who is also on the MIFA board. And can anybody, who did I miss? John is, and Joe, okay. Joe is, who has just opened a shop on High Street. Yeah. And I'd like to give a particular shout out to a gentleman sitting next to Susan Knightley. This is John Armstrong, who lives in Amherst. John and his wife Elizabeth have been phenomenally generous donors to this project and have moved this process along. And we're very excited by their enthusiasm and by, you know, it's an incredible thing. We know what problems we all have, not just in Holyoke, but in the region, in the world. And when you see people working together to make some of these problems, shall we say, ameliorate them or even make them go away, then we really got progress. So, and I would like to now, speaking of progress, introduce the mayor of this great city, Mayor Garcia, who is going to say a few words. And Josh got this phase of this progress going, and he has just been incredible. Thank you, Josh.
Thanks so much, Don, and thank you, everybody. You know, for everybody that has, how long have you been at it, Don? Since 2005. There have been a lot of folks that have been in strong support, and thank you to all of them. And I know there are a lot of people who, and I think you've described it pretty well, victory fatigue, and might be frustrated or you know, I just want to say that that's okay. This is a big project. It's complicated. It's not meant to be easy at all. There's a lot of moving parts to it, and for folks that have been following it, support it, fantastic. And for people that are frustrated or have a lot of thoughts of what they think might be going on, that's okay. You know, that's a normal part of the process. My conversation with Don and his team, I think we're just kind of losing a public relations battle. We need to be transparent. We need to communicate consistently what's been going on, why, whether if it's good or even bad. We got to share it so that people can understand it in this process. And so I appreciate Don and his team putting this together just so that folks know we are being live recorded. People will be able to watch this in their local access channel at home. And I'm really hoping that you can get what you need out of this presentation and then also ask the very important questions. I know you've already went to the council, you've met at the committee level, you've done your thing there. Now here we are doing our thing here and continue to do what we can to close that gap so that we can build the momentum we need to get behind this, continue to stay behind this project. But just so that folks know, you're gonna hear about it, there is movement, construction has started, and I'm gonna let them kind of go into that, where that is, what's going on. There are some loose ends we're trying to close as far as funding gaps is concerned, and there's strategies at play at the moment to close that gap, and you know, we'll probably share a little bit about that too as well. And for anybody that, like, you know, looks at me and says, why would you stand behind this project? Why? I think the bottom line for me is just that everybody knows is, like, it's two reasons. One, I'm tired of people saying that things like this can't exist in my community. It's frustrating. That's number one. And there's good debate on both sides and things that I'm going to hold Don accountable for in this community when this thing is built. And the other, I know I said two. Give me a moment. It's been a long weekend for me. It's always arts and culture that's being shafted. You know, we'll invest in anything and everything else, but when it comes to a project like this, there's never money, and I'm sick of that too. And so I know, and it's been a frustrating process. I think myself and Don has had our own behind-the-scenes battles, and that's normal for a project like this, for any team that's working together trying to do something big. You know, I know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and we just need to make sure that we continue to stay united in this process, continue to offer support so that we can get this project to completion. And then once it's completed, we're gonna have other battles, and we'll figure that out when we get there. But right now, we just wanna finish this thing. And so thank you, Don and Susan, for putting this event together. You know, very much looking forward to get these questions answered the best we can, so that after today, we've gained a little bit more support and get to the finish line. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. So I'm now going to ask Susan Palmer to come up. From this point on, we're going to walk you through some interesting parts and where we are at with the project, and also there will be a period after Susan's presentation when we'll be answering questions. And if you took a slip of paper when you came in, you can write your question on there, but you can also, we won't stop you from asking a question with a mic. You'll have the mic. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce, if you haven't met her before, Susan Palmer. She is our project manager, and she has a tremendous history of and future and present of saving theaters across America. And it's a process, and it's an amazing one. And she, I think, is the best in the business of anybody who does this. So without further ado, Susan.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Scott, for hosting us. Also, there was a late arrival here that I think we should introduce. Rick Sullivan from the Western Mass EDC is here. Great big supporter of ours. And thank you to the mayor for coming and all the city council people and our board. So I am going to just walk through a presentation to give you a little bit of an update. Some of you have seen pieces of this before. We did present some of this to a subcommittee of your city council a few weeks ago, and we keep updating it because the information changes every day. Every time we spend $1 or earn $1, the numbers change, and we have to keep people aware of that. I'm going to go through it. It's going to provide the context for the Q&A that we're going to have afterwards. So if you have any burning questions and you've written down your questions, we'll take them. And if you haven't and you want to raise your hand, we can answer them that way also. Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm doing this. So the main thing that's going to happen in this theater is it's going to be a Tier A Broadway touring theater. And I will tell you, I work with theaters all over the country. And I was just working with one in Reno, Nevada, and the woman who runs the theater, the CEO of that theater, said, our Broadway series pays for everything. We run at a surplus every year, and we don't do any annual fundraising. I think that was great news. We haven't heard that. I haven't even heard that, but that's how popular these shows are, and that's going to become the basis for the financial foundation of our organization and how we are going to pay for all the other community programming that we want to bring to Holyoke and to the region. So 1,600 seats, as Don says, it's the only one in the Pioneer Valley that will have the seating capacity that can take Tier A. There is no place else that these shows can go. So not only are we going to offer this to our community, but we are going to establish your community as a destination location for people who want to come and see this content on your stage in Holyoke. Creating the everlasting legacy of arts, culture, and economic vitality. And I put this in here because this is what the theater is going to look like, and this is what your downtown is going to look like at night on Suffolk Street in Holyoke. And I just feel like that's vibrancy, that's safety, that's energy, that's life on your streets. And I know it's going to be a transformational difference in the way that we all experience Holyoke here in the evening. These are some of the shows that are on tour right now. You can go other places to see them, and some of you do that, but pretty soon those shows are going to be in your theater, and you won't have to drive. It's going to be right here. So this is our plan. So we're going to be bringing Broadway to a place where people otherwise wouldn't get a chance to see it. It's going to be right here in your downtown. Well, I don't know what that noise was. And we have a very strong education program that's actually already underway. So the kids are going to see what it is, how it is to be able to be involved in the arts. We also are going to be doing technical theater production training. And that means jobs for middle class, perfect good jobs for people who want to work in this industry. And someone like Scott will tell you, this is a real job, and you can do this, and this is how you can make a great living. Working with our partners at Community College, Holyoke Public Schools, and this little icon over at the side here, it's IATSE. That is, I suppose this has a pointer on it, but I wasn't told how to use it. But anyway, that is the International Association of Professional Theater Stagehands. So they're going to help us with our training program. It's written into their charter that they need to work with regional nonprofit theaters to provide training to bring people up through the program so that there are professionals that can work in theaters all over the country. Singular opportunity for cultural entertainment. One of the things that I think is going to be important here, and this has already been done, is bringing in national and international theater, dance, and music. Don has contacts all over the world. All of the best in theater in London, France. He has contacts, and they talk to him all the time about when's your theater going to be done. We want to bring our content and our programs to this theater. So we're going to have exposure here that other theaters, even the best theaters in the Berkshires, can't do because we don't have those they don't have those kind of contacts. We have that kind of contact with Don. These are the partners that we're working with, and I mentioned them before, the Community College Public Schools, and that's IATSE, the local 53 is your local one here, and then the school system here, and these are the kinds of training that kids and adults who go through the program are going to be able to enjoy, benefit from. So this is one of my favorite things. I did a study here. It's called the User or Consumer Demand Study. And we tested for these 10 market potential variables of how people in your area are currently spending their money. This is a 30-minute drive time from the theater, 60 and 90-minute drive time. So this is an aggregate of all of the people who are currently spending their disposable income dollars, currently spending their disposable income dollars on these kinds of things. And you don't have anything like that here. So that means they're getting into their cars and driving away. And I think we have, yes, this is my favorite one. So this is the theater only. So if we go back, attended live theater in the last 12 months, this is the map for only the theater. So here is where we are all sitting, right here in Holyoke. And you can see the green hotspots. These are people who are currently spending their disposable income on theater right now, and you don't have one. So you know what that means? They're getting in their car. You are all getting in your cars and driving elsewhere. What I would like to point out to you, everybody knows about the cultural scene in Berkshire County, right? This is the Berkshires over here. I know it well. I was born and raised there. This is the resident population that's spending their current disposable income on theater. Only this small corner, in the southwest corner, this is the affluent part of the Berkshire County, they're spending their money on theater. Look what's happening over here. All these people are spending their money on theater. You know what that means? They're getting in their cars and they're driving over here, they're driving down here, they're driving over here. And when you have your theater here, that money's gonna stay in town. They're gonna spend their money in your theater, they're gonna go out to eat in your restaurants, and they're gonna do the things that they're currently doing over in the Berkshires. You should be saying, wow. So we do like to dig up the pictures of the old historic images of the theater. I always put this one in. This was in the theater. This is when it was a movie house, and then it was vacated, and I just love this. This is evocative, but this talks about it was an old movie house. It's sitting there, it's dirty, it's in decay, but there is something there that's worth preserving. And the history of this place is every bit as important as the future of this place. So we want to include that in our messaging. I put this also in here. All this is showing are people who've been in there on tours and how evocative it is to people and how it inspires their imagination of what this theater could mean to them. This guy got on the stage, and you can see, this is here right here today, the scrim is all torn up. He didn't care. He got on and did a dance. And I just feel like it's important to know how something like this inspires the dreams of people in your community. This is some of the work that's been ongoing. For example, all 1,600 seats are gone. We've taken them out. All the side panels are preserved. They're in storage right now, and when the new seats come in, we'll put the historic sides and arms back on them. But there's a lot of work that's going on in there. We've heard a lot in the community, and you people who sit on the city council have heard, well, where's all the money going? There's nothing going on in there. Well, that's because you're not allowed in. You can't see what's going on there, and you can't see what's going on the roof because you just can't see it. But there is a lot going on in there right now, and we just can't show it to everybody because you know, it's a construction site. This is a project that's complete, that we raised money for, Don raised money for, and this community came up to they just came up to the challenge of raising $400,000 to restore these WPA murals. They were restored in New York City with state-of-the-art evergreen artists. I've worked with them all over the country. They do magnificent work, and those are restored, and they are in storage, and they're ready to be mounted when we put your theater back into service. This is the financial summary, and I don't expect anybody to be able to read this, but I'll just tell you, I mean, the big story is it gets more expensive every year. That's just, as does everything else, as does a loaf of bread. Everything gets more expensive every year. We are at an $80 million cost right now, $44 million identified, so we're halfway there. This is available to anybody who wants to see it, but it shows what we've received, what's remaining, and then all of those put together is $81 million. So we've spent over $8 million on the project so far. Some of that has gone to project development, some of that has gone to developers' fees, some of that has gone to the drawings. Our architectural drawings are complete, some of it went into the murals, and so on. So these are the numbers. This is what it costs. It's not free. And I talk about this in every community. People say, my God, you know, it's so expensive. And I say, well, what isn't? And this is what it costs. And, you know, this is what we're spending the money on, putting this theater back into service for your community. These are the ways that we have been engendering support. So one of the big things that we're doing is pursuing financing. And that is because some of the money that, a lot of the money, frankly, that we've been awarded is called reimbursable, which means, for example, we have about somewhere between $17 and $19 million of historic tax credits. Those will be calculated right at the bitter end when we know the exact cost of the historic components of the restoration. So we've got that money. It's guaranteed for us. We don't get it until the building is put back into service. So that means we have to borrow against those historic tax credits to spend the value of that money that we can do the work, and then when we get our CO and the building's put into service, that's when we collect the money. So financing is a big part of it, and then of course philanthropy is also a very big part of it, and we have been, you know, so grateful and so lucky to have private support from the community and gifts small and large. The mayor has made a huge commitment, a philanthropy commitment to the project. I'm keeping this mayor on the hook. He knows it. And John Armstrong and so many other very generous people who are giving significant funds and who have pledged significant funds really to get this theater open. And they're not doing it just for themselves, they're doing it for the community, they're doing it for all of us. We are at the point now that we can do a Q&A. So, how do you want to do this? I'm happy to entertain questions. Fleur has some written questions, I think. No. You have some, though, don't you, Fleur? Okay,
great. I have one slip, but...
We have one question after all this?
One written question. I'm sure we have more.
Okay. Okay, Johan, if you raise your hand and you have a question, he's going to grab you because we're being taped, and we want to make sure that everyone's questions are heard. So, do you want me to read this?
Yes.
When is the expected impact of the theater? What is the expected impact of the theater on the city? You want to answer that?
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm going to answer that in two ways. I'm going to start with the financial impact. The impact of the city to the city of the theater opening and running is the theater will generate close to $4 million in income, and that money then translates into restaurants that are going to open in the region or the neighborhood. It also translates into a general lifting of the statistics of the value of property in the city, and it also enables the city and the surrounding community to have, as a cultural example, the access to lots of funds that are available to. We've seen this happen in Detroit, in Chicago, and much larger cities than this, how it stimulates the general development. That's a financial development. And it's very important to understand that when the theater is open, the pro forma, the business model for the theater, people buying tickets, pays for the theater. I mean, there will, of course, be some philanthropic continuation of fundraising for programs like the education program, et cetera, but the theater will pay through ticket sales, and that's very important because it's a big enough theater and because we have that kind of fail-safe of the Broadway shows to guarantee income. So that's very important. And but it also enables other kinds of activities to be generated. So that is the economic impact. The other impact is the what we've seen nationwide, how when a city or a community has a facility that brings people in. It's mysterious. I began my career with the late Joseph Papp, the New York Shakespeare Festival in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, which was a dump. I mean, it was really, really a dump. And Joe started doing those shows, and you know, who could ever explain why people coming and paying reasonable amounts of money for tickets just changes. It just changes it. Now go to that same neighborhood, Lafayette Street, with NYU expanded all over the place, and it just happens. That's what happens. So that's part of that.
I want to add to that.
Yep, sure.
So I'm just going to give you some math. So this is a 1,600-seat theater. In this country, at any given night, a nonprofit regional theater's occupancy rate is 65%. That means anytime your theater doors are open, if you hit the national medium, and you will, about 1,174 people will be coming in and out of that theater maybe twice a week. Just think what happens when 1,174 people come pouring out of those doors. They're going to want to go have a drink. They want to go have a dinner before or after. If it's a matinee, they want to go shopping. The impact really is the transformative effect of ticket buying population patronizing your theater. That's the big thing. And there are other questions, aren't there? Go ahead, Susan.
I just had one. I just wanted to add on to what you're saying, because I've worked in using the arts as an economic driver in other communities, and it's fascinating how it works. And sitting next to this fellow who really knows about Schenectady, right? And so at any rate, I wanted to ask you about what the plan is right now in terms of from what I'm looking at the numbers, it looks like we've got to raise about $10 million now, right? And get matched. Is this what Maura Healy has said she would do, right? If she will match 10 million and we're going to be raising 10 million. Do I understand that correctly?
Well, that's loosely correct, Susan.
Okay.
It is. She has committed $3.5 million, and that is being used for planning and development and pre-construction, which is ongoing right now. Mm-hmm. The original $13 million that was awarded by Governor Baker, then he left office and it was never activated. That is what her goal is, to go to that. But we actually need about $44 million altogether. So if she comes back to the table with her 10, we've got another major donor that we're soliciting for close to $10 million, and so on, and we expect to find some more financing. You know, that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
Mayor.
Can you just go to that slide on the, that was hard to read?
The number slide?
Yeah, because it's like 40 million identified, and there's actual plan for the other 40 million. But just kind of walk through on the scheme here as far as, the financing is concerned that's going to get us there.
We are pursuing a combination of federal funding, and if you don't mind if I say so, Joshua, Joshua and one of our finance people went to visit one of our federal congressmen. Can I say this?
Yes.
Yeah, to pursue some significant funding. So that effort is underway. We have the state effort underway. We have private donors who we are pursuing right now, one of whom is considering well into the seven-figure support, as well as his own financing piece of it, which means it's going to be a loan and need to be paid back. And then there'll be ongoing public campaigns and so forth. So it's always going to be a combination of public and private financing. And I will tell you, Susan mentioned Proctor's Theater in Schenectady, and John, one of our major donors, was actually born there. If you're not familiar with Proctor's Theater in Schenectady, in the late 70s, it was scheduled for demolition by the then mayor. And the community rose up and said, you know, my grandmother had her first date. You know, all the nostalgia that happens with these theaters was happening there. That theater is put into service. It went into service. I worked on this job in 2003. Back then, it was a $33 million project. And it was funded in thirds, 1/3 loans, 1/3 federal funding, and 1/3 capital campaign private funding, foundations and so forth. And that was in 2003. And that has transformed Schenectady. When Philip Morris, the CEO, took that over, there were 2 dollar stores left in downtown Schenectady. They both closed, so there was nothing left. Last year, we got a bus from Peter Pan, who donated the bus. The mayor, his wife, his kids, and a whole bunch of other of us piled on to that bus and went over to see what happened in Schenectady. And when I'm telling you, that theater was built the same year your theater was built, and if it can be done in Schenectady, it can be done here.
What did you see? Share what you saw. Well, you know, there almost immediately, Susan, there were 3 hotels that opened up in the downtown. Almost immediately. 11 new restaurants opened up immediately. Then Philip Morris, in his genius, his philosophy, and this is our philosophy, it is how do you serve your community? His philosophy is how do we serve this community? And he looked at what the needs were. One of the things that he did was buy the building next door, and he put a cogeneration plant in there, so they're generating all their own electricity, which is a significant expense for theaters, cooling and heating these giant spaces, and those lights don't come cheap. These lights are not inexpensive to operate. So he's taking care of his own electric bill. Then he talked the city of Schenectady into digging up the sidewalks and putting down those wires underneath the sidewalks to melt the snow. And he's selling that electricity to the city. The other need that he saw in the downtown was that the trash handling was being handled badly. So they are doing trash compacting and selling services to their neighbors in the downtown. So this is what theaters do now. Are we about showbiz? Yes, we are. But we are about community gathering, and we are also about serving this community and meeting the needs. Who else has a question?
Well, I have a bunch of them, but because I do have a bunch of them, I figured I would wait for everybody who had just one question to do it first. So,
Steve Adams?
Talk about the relationship with other institutions in the region, in the area, that are sort of complementing the work and each other as the theater, once it opens up, regarding the community college and other institutions here that you'll be connecting with.
Do you want to do that one? You've made the
Yes,
relationships.
sure.
Yeah.
Well, those are really the community and educational. I don't want byproduct doesn't sound as as great as what they are. So the relationships that we're looking at that are in process are Holyoke Community College, where we have talked about having a training program. Think of the theater as a maritime academy, where all the backstage, the non-artistic jobs are being dealt with, like box office, sound, light, all the technological, and Susan alluded to that with the cooperation of YATSE training. So that is a very, very strong and interesting. We're working talking with UMass about similar kinds of interconnections. And then there were wonderful things like, Mark Todd is not here, so I don't want to put him on the spot, but we've always talked about how great to have the High School Musical on in a real Broadway show, in a real Broadway theater. And so those are the kinds of things that happen as a spin-off. There's another element, again, sounds very exotic, but you have to have the theater open, which is that we are 3 hours from New York. and we'll have a Broadway-sized theater and space for people to rehearse. And so what the largest owners of theaters in the world, Ambassador Theater Group, took a lease on the Colonial Theater in Boston, and they generated Moulin Rouge there, which is on Broadway now. And the idea that Holyoke could also be able to generate new works and raise money from the producers who now it would cost about 1/4 to develop a show in Holyoke as it costs in New York City, and less than what it would cost in Boston. There are things like that that happen that have this kind of a byproduct. I think what's very interesting too about the figures here, getting back to Josh's question, these budgets are very hard to read, even if you're used to it. And I think what Susan is pointing out, if you can read in the top part where it says received, remaining. Let me just quickly, go down to that first column all the way to the left, and it ends at $8 million. That represents money that has already been raised and spent. That has paid for the full architectural drawings, for everything that has been done to date. The next column is what is remaining, okay? And remaining to be brought in, okay? And there at the top you see $8,500,000, and then you see $8,500,000 again. Those are the tax credits, the state and federal tax credits. The feds match the state tax credits, and that's when we talk about $19 million is already committed to this project. It's, as Susan says, it's collateral though. We get it when the project opens, okay? So we have to raise money against that to use it. Then you come down to where we're projecting individuals, 500,000, 10 million from a community campaign, which is what Susan was alluding to, 75,000 each from corporations. And these are all consistent with monies that we have already raised in the way that we've raised the $8 million. Then you get down to, we have projected monies, like from mass development, there's $1 million. And we have congressionally directed spending. Those are the kinds of programs that we're talking to the federal government, the congressman about. And then below that is the potential financing sources, and you see a whopping $22 million there, okay? And that is from Axos Bank, which is a financing institution that's in the business of funding projects like this. And we have already a letter of agreement from them that they are committing $22 million to this project. And then underneath that, you have the, again, we have two private investors that we're looking at who are very, very close to closing on. So that gives you an idea. That brings us to 70, the total down at the bottom there. Remember, that's a total going against what we're saying is the total cost of the whole project of $81 million, okay? So in answer to how much we have left to go, we're always in that balance. But it's a very good picture. And that's why I want to look at some of those things for you to realize that $19 million in tax credits and $22 million in a financing package on top of our regular ability to raise money is very good. That puts us at, when Susan says we have identified about $40 to $44 million towards 81 million. And the 81 million, by the way, includes the full total construction of the building, everything, the works. And which is now estimated at which is about, we're reckoning that it's probably, it's now about $71 million. Things happen every week. Like once we got into construction, we found that the sewers underneath the alley are cracked on both sides and they need to be repaired. And it's the owners of the buildings that have to repair those. That's not the city's problem, okay? Yeah, so things go up. You know, it's like anybody who does some renovation on their house, it never goes down. So then we get to that column where at the end it says, okay, that's at the bottom, it says 81. I know this is very hard, but I just want to give you a picture, because when you just talk about it, it sounds very abstract. But these are all the monies that have been raised when we talk about 19 million tax credits, 22 from Axos Bank, the monies that have come in already and been spent, those are real. And that's why we feel at this point that we are at an extraordinary moment, particularly, and I do have to give a shout out to Governor Healy, who made the commitment of $3.5 million to this project. And the governor has done that to stimulate others, not just individuals, but other departments of her own government and other departments of the federal government to get involved with this. So,
Giving you the hand.
okay, that's the hand.
There was a question in the back.
Actually, I'll defer my question on.
Anybody else? I know, Mimi, you're ready? Okay.
Thanks. So I think you've already gotten the first one on my list, because I did get to see the presentation to DGR a month ago, and it was very confusing in the sense that you were talking about having all of the funds identified somehow. And when you looked at it, there were funds that were committed, as the one from the Axios group, and that all made sense. But it was not clear to a great many people watching what was meant by identified sources of funding. And it sounds to me like the identified sources of funding are, in fact, we are hopeful, we are not certain.
That's correct.
Okay, fair enough. So that's got that one answered. The next one is, as you are aware, and thank you for this, the site plan approval from 2019 expired some years ago. And at the time, we loved the site plan. And we are looking forward to seeing it again, which I understand is underway.
That's correct.
But at the time, one of the things that we went back and forth with, although by back and forth I mean we asked the question and we got a clear answer, but we wanted to know whether this was in any way a phased project, whether construction would start before all of the money was available. Because, of course, one of our concerns was a project, even at the magnitude at the time, you don't want to start construction and then run out of money partway through.
That's also correct.
So it will be the case when we see this again that this is not a phased project. When you start construction, we are good to go.
So the plan is to go from beginning to end. Every single one of these projects actually is a miracle. The money that's raised in communities like this, it's unbelievable from the beginning, and it's unbelievable when it's all done. We are spending the money on the certain preparation components of the project that need to be done to keep moving to the next step, and it's understood by the donor base that that is how we were using this funding. One of the things that happens in projects like this, and I work on them all over the country, these projects take 20 or 30 or 40 years to do. It's not unusual. The theaters go dark, and then nobody buys a ticket for 40 years. There is no affinity group for these theaters. This is not where you got your graduate degree. Your grandma wasn't saved in the theater like they were at the hospital. All the things that are easily raising money, the big institutions, we don't have that kind of affinity group. So we're working on that as well. And when I go to these communities, what I am dealing with in every single community, and there's no difference here, is there's skepticism because it's taking so long. So we have to overcome that, and we have to do a little bit at a time. So doing a little bit at a time and doing work that's visible helps people to think, oh, okay, it's going to happen now. Something's happening. It just takes time, and it gets more expensive every year.
So this may, in fact, become a phased project.
It's unknowable. It's unknowable. It's not the intention.
Okay. And these are technical questions. I am absolutely not questioning the fact that you really spent the money that you spent or that you spent it on the theater. This is just my attempt to get at the technical facts for the people who ask me.
And I think you're doing the right thing, and we want you to be armed with the right answers. Maybe I will tell you one thing. What I say to people when I come to these communities, and I'm going to Texas tomorrow for one that's been empty for the same amount of time, it's about the same size project, and it's the same skepticism. What I tell the people in the community is the people who have worked on these jobs for all these years, like Don, and all the people who have been involved, and all of the political contingency that has stood behind it, they have done noble work on these buildings.
Well,
it's been noble work to protect your asset, your historic asset, from the wrecking ball, from the critters, from the homeless population that may want to move in, and all of those things have happened. And when we worked on Proctor's, there was 2.5 feet of pigeon detritus on the floor.
Yeah, no, I get all of that.
Okay.
And I respect the work. But my questions are more like, for instance, there are Jersey barriers, there's construction fencing. It is very cool that that's gone up. Do you have permits for it? You're supposed to have permits for it.
We're working with professionals who are doing all the permitting. This is by the book, top to bottom.
Okay, because the building department, last we checked, didn't seem to have anything.
Well, they have what we're required to have.
Okay, that is good to know. And next one, the bid documents. It is great that they're getting finalized. What does it mean in terms of what is actually happening there? When the bid documents are finalized, what will result from having them?
I can answer this if you want me to. So this happens again every job. So we've identified our construction management firm. It's Bar and Bar. They've done a lot of work in this city. I've done work with them in other projects in other communities. They did Radio City Music Hall. I mean, these people know what they're doing. The bid docs are prepared to go out to the subs. So the HVAC subs, the utility people, the people who are coming in, the acousticians that are doing the sub work that are not their expertise, those are what the bid docs are being prepared for. So those components of the project can go out to bid.
Okay, but it doesn't mean that they're going out to bid imminently. It just means that they'll be ready when you have the money.
So the way that these projects work means we don't know what it's cost until the bid docs actually come in and we accept the bids. That's the reality. We work with order of magnitude numbers from the beginning, and it gets refined and refined and refined and refined as we go through the project. So the answer is, I think the answer to your question or your statement is yes, we will be spending the money, but we will know better what the actual final cost will be once the bids are accepted.
Well, yeah. So the bid documents will mean that you know what you are asking people to bid on when the time comes to bid.
Well, they're going to look at the plans and say, okay, this is what it's going to cost to do your HVAC. This is what it's going to cost to do the acoustics in your ceiling. This is what it's going to cost to do all of these subcontractor types of work.
So there will be no immediate result from having them done.
The only intention with having them done is to get the bids in, to finalize the costs.
Okay, so you are going out to at least get the initial bids on these.
And that will be handled by Bar and Bar. They're the
Okay.
general contractors. They go out to their subs. They have a whole contingent of people
Well,
that
of
they work
course.
with all over the country, and they're going to be putting out to bid and accept the bids. There you go.
Very interesting question.
Yeah.
Two things about the phasing. We've gone through that, and we just got the word on the possibility of phasing this project, because we'd all like to think, if we could just do something for $10 million, and we found that, and Bar, as Susan said, who are the contractors, they did this very thorough, it's like about 4 pages long, and it has shown that really we're at the stage, so much, even though it may not look that way, so much has been done that there's no real ability or no real gain in phasing. It was about $500,000 that would be saved by doing 3 phases at this point.
Yeah.
So, and just so you know, the bid documents, which have been paid for in that $8 million down there, they're all done and they're ready to go out to the contractors or to the areas that farther work, down a year and a half away. But everything that needs to be done now has already been identified. And so if you saw the contracts that we have with, for example, the earmark money from the state, you'd see that it's very specifically, Susan and I don't do that, or Fleur, Bar and Bar does that, and the architects, and it's very specific, the different parts of the structure and all that. So that's all in place.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, it
And
really
just
is, yeah.
to be clear,
Yeah.
you know, we wanted to hear the answer that there will be no phasing.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, me too.
going all at once is the obvious way to do this.
Yes, because I've just said, I mean, quite frankly, we're at the phase, and again, I have to say,
Yeah.
where we have identified, identifying is a phrase in the business, you
I
know,
suspect as
we,
much.
it's identified in our context is that the monies are there, and the tax credits aren't going to go away. Axos is not going to go away. They're hard and fast. It's activating them with the other monies to look at the whole picture. So actually, we had this incredible meeting a week ago Wednesday, and it was exactly about phases. And Susan wasn't on that, but other people who were on it will tell you. I said, I just know this phasing thing is not going to work, you know, because
Yeah.
I mean, we're at the point now where we really do think, and I know this sounds like a lot of chutzpah, I really do think that we are going to be able to close that gap between what we've identified and what we need, specifically, even just for of that 81 million, about 8 million is soft costs. It's not the actual hard cost construction. So that's where we're at. So if that's good news, bring it back, you know, and it really is not going to be a phased project by any, let's
Excellent.
say, willingly.
Yeah, yeah. No, that is good news.
Yeah.
And thank you. That gives me a much clearer picture.
Great, yes. And just, that's why I brought up about
Yeah.
the monies actually spent. That's what's been a success, is that all the architectural drawings, some of the bid drawings are still in process. We're told they'll be ready the 1st of September, but it's
Yeah, well,
99%, yeah.
And I'm sure it'll be great. I mean, it was a great site plan.
Yep.
And one final one that I am passing along, which is the National Register, the National Historic Register of the building. Questions have been raised about whether it is on the National Historic Register. I couldn't find it in the listing, but I'm not a professional. But this doesn't matter unless it affects the federal tax credits.
And I can answer this, and we
Yay.
will send you the package that we sent to the city council and so forth, which our expert on who handles the tax credits made the distinction. Massachusetts is one of the few states where the tax credits are awarded before the building goes on the National Register, and we'll give you a copy of that. They
I
sent
think
the
I
letter.
actually, send me
I mean,
the letter.
and I know this was
Yeah.
a question that came up at both the committee meeting and the general council meeting. It's very clearly articulated,
Okay,
even
great.
for us, and it's the other states, but there's another state, Rhode Island is the same. They do the tax credits first. That doesn't mean if a building is already on the National Register, they can just go for the taxes. You know,
Yeah.
but in Massachusetts, you don't have to be on the register to go for them and get them. You have to be eligible. And in this letter, you'll see we're eligible. We've already been passed by part 1, part 2.
Yeah, I saw that Macris have you.
Yeah.
It was just the Federal Register.
Yes.
And yeah, I would
Yes.
love to see the letter laying
Yes.
out how it works.
We'll make sure you have that.
But then I can start explaining it to people,
Yes.
which will be
Yeah, and we'd be happy to
Great.
articulate it too.
May I have that for a second? So all of the city council people that are in this room tonight and the mayor all got a copy of all of that, because the question's out there and we just want to put it to bed. It takes us a lot of time to keep answering that question over and over again.
Yeah.
So we would like to put that question to bed. If you're in the city council here, raise your hand. Okay, you all got these, and you can confirm to Mimi that you've seen the documentation that confirms.
Well, no, there is a problem.
I have the document, but it's still not clear.
Okay, well, we can answer the questions. We can answer the questions.
That piece, I don't want to speak to that because my
Yeah.
question is not about money. I don't care about none of that. Mine is more about programming.
Okay.
Well, I'm about to be done, and I
Great.
think
Thank you,
there's
Mimi.
just one final remark on that packet, because if it is the one that was distributed to the city council, it had a possible error in it, in that there was something that was signed off on by OPED saying that you were on the National Register, and then if you looked at the underlying documentation, it didn't say that. It referred to Macris, which is something different. And, you know, any lawyer is going to get twitchy about something like that. And, you know, I'm sure from what you're saying that you've now cleared it up, but yeah, let's get that cleared
It's
up.
cleared, and the bottom line is that tax credits are coming to your community. So that's the bottom line.
Well, the bottom line is that there are many people who would like to confirm that.
Okay.
So
Okay.
thank you, and I will turn it over to the Honorable City Councilor.
I only have one question for me. All that money stuff is not my thing. I'll let you guys deal with all that. There's 13 votes. Everyone else can go ahead and do that research. For me, the most important piece is you guys speak to programming, and with youth programming, incorporating youth into the project. Is that happening currently now, or is that something that we're going to build out once the building is operating? Because there's two different things to say that we're working with the youth in the community at the moment, or that we plan to work with the youth and with the partners or whoever it is when it opens, if it's 10, 20 years, 30 years from now. For me, I went to Holyoke Magnet Middle School for the arts. That was a very impactful moment for me in my 6th to 8th grade, and for a lot of other people that went to Magnet Middle School. So for me, it would be good to have this, even the build out of the programs that you're talking about, starting now, so that the kids have this experience starting now. Did I do something wrong? All right. I think so. So just for me, it's like it would be good to start seeing what the process is now, right? What are the plans? Who are we working with now currently? Was it the Boys and Girls Club? Is it the YMCA? Are we running after school programming now? What are the things that we're aspiring to? What are the small goals that'll help build out that larger picture, that when you do have the place up and running, it would just be running?
So I put the pictures up of some of the programs. I mean, you can see Don right up here. This is the middle school program that we did. I mean, these are things that have already happened and they're ongoing. We're in the schools all the time. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean.
Current programming.
So currently, I mean, I was talking about the technical training, et cetera, but currently we also have the artistic and, sociological, cultural, projects underway. We have the Victory Players who come every year, and they appear in not only the Holyoke school system, but in surrounding school systems like South Hadley and West Springfield. And we have been doing the Hispanic Theater Festival. Now those are companies that come in. I mean, they're not rehearsing something. But here's what's great about them is, and we just had the most recent example is what we had in January with the Emily Dickinson project that we were doing as a co-production between MIFA and Holyoke and the Victory Players in Holyoke and the Emily Dickinson Museum and Ensemble for the Romantic Century in New York. So in addition to its being created here and recorded actually at Holyoke Media, so we had also the school program where from the high school we work most closely, I suppose, on given the level that we feel most adept at on the high school level, and Bevan Brunel with the drama club. And so those students all came and worked with the actors. So whenever we have visiting artists, we always, and historically we've done that, some of these pictures are when Holbrook came in 2013. Okay.
Right.
But that still happens. That still happens all through. And of course, once the theater is open, we'll be having a constant stream of people that can work on that level, and that the programming is, probably the most, it sounds dear to my heart in the sense of new works and the impact. When the singer who was singing the Amy Beach songs here being recorded was listened to by the high school students. I've never seen anything like that before, honestly. I wish people could see that. They had never heard that level. There she was, this soprano, standing there singing these songs with this voice, and then she started working with them, talking to them about how the voice works, and you don't need to know all the notes when you first learn what your voice is. So that's the kind of thing. We do that consistently. Yeah, thank you for the question. It's a very important one.
Thanks, Susie.
We've got one more. She grabbed the mic, and then you, Susan, okay?
Who wants it? Here.
Grabbed the mic. What's going on here?
Hi. First of all, I'd like to thank you for having this and thank Holyoke Media, of course. But I also think it's important that you move around the city, such as Senior Center, maybe have it in the high school auditorium down at Dean. I think the more people you can get to be at your meetings, the better it will be. So that would be my suggestion. But thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. That's a very good one. Thank you.
I'm just curious because I remember cobwebs at the public, and I saw things at BAM when the lights were rough, and I'm just wondering, is that what we're talking about, that it won't be phased? In other words, we won't have productions in there before we're 100%.
Yes,
is that what you're
correct.
saying? And the
Correct.
reason for that is
Because it's not because the Victory, unlike the library, the Astor Place Library, or BAM itself, was not so physically deteriorated that it couldn't be used as a building. Unfortunately, the Victory, even when we took it over, and it certainly deteriorated more since, just from age, was not possible to have anybody work in there in that same way that early BAM and the Public Theater could. Yeah, when we first took over the project, I thought that we would have a field office in the Victory, and then the engineers came in and said, look, you have to redo the entire building to have just heating in one room. So yeah.
Jim Ross Meisel. I did a tour in 5 or 6 with Olivia Meisel, because she
Yes.
was a co-worker at Holyoke High with me. And your comment, I was almost afraid I was going to come out with something after I went in. Susan maybe has the answer, maybe you. I was in the Bushnell. How does that compare to this?
Sure. The Bushnell is a very interesting comparison, and what's being brought up is really the only theater near to us that has the capacity that the Victory will have. We're talking about the Bushnell Theater in Hartford, Connecticut, and they have, if we just talk about the Broadway series, they have a Tier A Broadway series. And why do they have that? Because it's now about 10 years ago, they decided that they needed that. The Bushnell is a 3,000-seat auditorium, and it was built as a concert hall for the symphony, for the Hartford Symphony, and for so they had to convert it to be usable. They had built a beautiful, smaller theater of about 1,000 seats right next door, but that's unfortunately not big enough to house the Broadway show, and so they had to retrofit the main auditorium, and that's 3,000 seats.
Another part, I'm a retired shop teacher, and it seems like we have a vocational school here that has students that have mechanical talent. Why are they not involved in helping in this rehab? Maybe with the general contractor or whatever. Yeah.
That's a very good question. I mean, we do work with the dean's students, and I was on the committee there, and we work with the dean's students like for the St. Patrick's Day floats. And, there's a problem with using, you probably
Age.
Yeah, exactly, and student labor when you interfacing at the level of sophistication that the bar and bar contractors are.
Professional.
Yeah, and they actually do have an apprentice program, but it's still a stage, a couple of stages beyond what the dean kids are, students are, at. But there's no reason why, once the technical part gets going at the Victory, that wouldn't be able to be adjusted. In fact, we've seen plans for that.
And then Susan's map of theater money, the green sections, it seems like all that green, we'll say in Western Mass here, it seems like it's probably running down to Hartford, maybe to Boston, because my wife and son go to both, and but it's not. It would stay right here.
It would.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
listen, that's
And
the
more.
prediction.
And more.
Yes.
Personally speaking.
In the same way that Hartford's a good example. I mean, when there was no Broadway capability in Hartford until the Bushnell retrofitted itself to do that specifically. The same thing in Boston. Boston has always had a touring program, but it just very quickly, they have been more interested that the two theaters that are capable there want to have a show just like Broadway does, like The Lion King, that comes and stays for 12 years, you know, and pays the rent. It's not the same thing as having like an oyster theater. We call it an oyster theater, where things are coming through, you know, every 6 weeks or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Hi, Dennis Luceriaga. I just wanted you to comment on the business in general and show business. I mean, is it healthy? Is it growing? Is it, you know, what did the pandemic do to it, et cetera? Thank you.
So after the pandemic, no one knew what they should expect. Some people were still afraid, some people weren't. A lot of the theaters that I worked in had their HVAC systems retrofitted, so they have the same kind of air circulation that you have in an airplane now. Every 7 minutes, the air is changed out. It costs money. The government paid for a lot of that. So a lot of those problems are solved, but I just did a ticket analysis. I've been in this business a very long time, and for most of my career, ticket prices went up annually, somewhere between 2 and 5%. And we would project, when we were doing operating pro formas, about 3% a year. I was just asked to do one for a client that I was working with last week in Newport, Rhode Island. They wanted to talk about annual ticket prices. So I went out to my theaters that are now in service all over the place, including Proctor's, and they said consumer behavior has changed so much, and people are so eager to go out and be in these venues that the small theaters, the smaller one, I was working with one that's 450 seats in McPherson, Kansas. They're projecting out 5% annually ticket price raising because they know the consumers are going to pay that. Proctor's is going up, he said, I'll quote him, we're going up aggressively 10% a year. Yeah. Anybody else have questions? No? Thank you. I would like to say thank you to all of you for your interest. I mean, this has really been helpful, and we feel good about sharing the story. You know, is it challenging? Yes, it is. Is it hard? It's very hard, but it's going to be worth it, and I think you're all going to be very happy, especially your mayor, when he's standing on the stage on opening night in his tuxedo, looking at all of you saying, you're welcome.
Josh, would you like to comment on that? Great. We learned a lot by doing this, and it is very interesting to say as to just the question that Dennis asked, that everything that everybody has asked are things that we go through every day, and if we don't know necessarily how to solve them, we know what the questions are and what is involved with answering them. And so it's very important. I realize, you know, again, it's so great to get out, and that's one of the reasons why we did this, to begin to have a public kind of feedback so we can understand too how we can best answer the questions and of this exotic thing, the theater, the fabulous invalid is what it's called. So it's very natural to have questions about it.
Yes. I have another question. Back in the mid-'80s, there's an art show that came to the city, and it made $250,000 roughly. So you getting involved in '05, it's 20 years before. What happened to that program?
This is a very good question, and this is another question that people ask a lot. And we did tremendous, Kathy McKean, who's our retired general manager, we got all the archives, and for about 3 years we studied all those, you know, those documents. And we're talking about the Arm & Hammer exhibition. And that money was given to the first group that started on saving the Victory Theater. It's very important to understand that they were going to have it continue as a movie theater, because that's what it had become. But movie theaters in 1992, that was not a way to go. And when they came, they raised about, I can tell you, about $1.3 million including that money. They had a grant from the Mass Cultural Council, and they were so ingenuous that they had actually been offered $1 million, and they only took $500,000 because they said, and Helen Casey, she sent me the letter, I have it. She said, we don't want to ask you for the other $500,000 because we don't know how to spend it yet. No fundraiser would ever do that now. Anyhow, so when they came to look at plans for the Victory, as a movie house, they came to be $9 million. And from Coffey Associates out in Chicago, the finest architects for those kinds of theaters, and they couldn't raise the money. And it was just as simple as that. And so the monies that you're talking about went into like a foundation and into an account, and we petitioned, MIFA did, for that money, and we received what was left that had not been spent. And it was all, I can honestly say, that the folks that had that original money, there was no funny business, nothing, everything was legit. They paid. We inherited 200,000. Yep. Yep. Which is part of that. Oh, it's not up there anymore. But that was part of that 8 million. And I think we spent it well. Thank you for coming. Thank you very much.